Hey fellow nerds, today we are going to learn Laplace transform. We'll be covering Laplace transform, relation between Fourier and Laplace transforms, region of convergence, properties of region of convergence, and inverse Laplace transform. Let us start by revisiting the application of continuous time Fourier transform in LTI systems. Before we learned Fourier transform, we used to show LTI systems in time domain like this. Before we learned Fourier transform, we used to show LTI systems in time domain like this. We have an LTI system whose impulse response is h of t. We are giving an input x of t, we are getting an output y of t. Using Fourier transform, we can show this in frequency domain. The frequency response of our LTI system is h of j omega. The input we are giving is x of j omega and output is y of j omega. Here x of j omega will be the Fourier transform of x of t, y of j omega is the Fourier transform of y of t, and h of j omega is the Fourier transform of h of t. So here we can write h of j omega is equal to integral from minus infinity to infinity h of t e raised to minus j omega t dt. Now, if we take s to be equal to j omega, then h of j omega will become h of s, and it will be equal to integral from minus infinity to infinity h of t e raised to minus st dt. Then we can show the LTI system in S domain like this. Input is x of s, output is y of s, and the response is h of s. Just like we defined h of s here, we can define x of s and y of s also. X of s is going to be integral from minus infinity to infinity x of t e raised to minus st dt, and y of s is going to be integral from minus infinity to infinity y of t e raised to minus st dt. We got all of this by taking s is equal to j omega. So in Fourier transform, we took s equals j omega, that is, s is purely imaginary. Now let us take s is equal to sigma plus j omega. It is not purely imaginary anymore, it has a real part also. Now if you write the s domain representation of a signal x of t, that is x of s is equal to integral from minus infinity to infinity x of t e raised to minus st dt, where s is not simply j omega, s is sigma plus j omega, it has a real part also, then we can call this Laplace transform. To show a signal x of t and its Laplace transform x of s, we'll be using this notation. We'll use a double-sided arrow with a L on top. Let us now compare Laplace transform and Fourier transform. For that, first consider a signal x of t. In S domain, we can represent it like this. X of s is equal to integral from minus infinity to infinity x of t e raised to minus st dt. Now here, s is sigma plus j omega. But we know that in Fourier transform, s is simply j omega, that is sigma is equal to 0. So we can easily conclude that the Laplace transform of a signal x of t for s equal to j omega, that is the real part sigma is equal to 0, gives us the Fourier transform of x of t. Which means x of s for s is equal to j omega gives us the Fourier transform of x of t. Now consider the same signal x of t again. In frequency domain, we can write it like this. X of j omega is equal to integral from minus infinity to infinity x of t e raised to minus j omega t dt. Instead of taking j omega, let us take sigma plus j omega. Then we get x of sigma plus j omega is equal to integral from minus infinity to infinity x of t e raised to sigma minus j omega multiplied by t dt. We have taken S to be sigma plus j omega. So x of sigma plus j omega can be called x of S. So x of S is equal to integral from minus infinity to infinity x of t. Here we have e raised to sigma minus j omega t. We're going to split it. We get e raised to sigma t multiplied by e raised to minus j omega t. So let's write it down. E raised to sigma t multiplied by e raised to minus j omega t dt. Now what we have over here on the right hand side is integral from minus infinity to infinity x of t e raised to sigma t e raised to minus j omega t dt. This is nothing but the Fourier transform of x of t e raised to sigma t. So we can conclude the relation. Laplace transform of a function x of t is nothing but the Fourier transform of the function x of t e raised to sigma t. Let us take an example to check this relation. We have a function x of t, it is e raised to minus t u of t. First, let us find its Fourier transform. X of j omega is equal to integral from minus infinity to infinity x of t e raised to minus j omega t dt. Here x of t is e raised to minus t u of t. So this becomes integral from minus infinity to infinity e raised to minus t u of t e raised to minus j omega t dt. We have u of t here. It has non-zero value only from 0 to infinity. So we don't have to integrate from minus infinity to infinity. Rather, we'll just take integral from 0 to infinity e raised to minus t. From 0 to infinity, u of t is 1. So we have 1 e raised to minus j omega t dt. We can combine these two by adding their exponents. So it will become e raised to minus 1 plus j omega t. Now if you integrate this, you will get minus 1 by 1 plus j omega multiplied by e raised to minus 1 plus j omega t, giving the limits from 0 to infinity. So this is minus 1 by 1 plus j omega multiplied by, when you give the upper limit, it's e raised to minus infinity, it is 0. When you give the lower limit, it is e raised to 0, it is 1. So you're getting 0 minus 1, that is minus 1. But we already have a minus 1 here. So they cancel and we get the final answer as 1 by 1 plus j omega. X of j omega is 1 by 1 plus j omega. Now let us try to find out the S-domain representation of x of t, that is the Laplace transform of x of t. X of S will be integral from minus infinity to infinity x of t e raised to minus st dt. Here x of t is e raised to minus t u of t. So we get integral from minus infinity to infinity e raised to minus t u of t e raised to minus st dt. But then again we have u of t here, so we don't have to integrate from minus infinity to infinity. We will rather integrate from 0 to infinity, and from 0 to infinity u of t is 1. So this equation becomes like this. Integral from 0 to infinity e raised to minus t e raised to minus st dt. Again we can combine these two by adding their exponents. It will become e raised to minus 1 plus st. Instead of writing 1 plus s, we can write s plus 1 also. Now let us integrate this. We'll get minus 1 by s plus 1 e raised to minus s plus 1 t, giving the limits from 0 to infinity. So this becomes minus 1 by s plus 1 multiplied by, giving the upper limit, we get e raised to minus infinity, which is 0. Giving the lower limit, we get e raised to 0, which is 1. So 0 minus 1, it is minus 1. Minus 1 and minus 1 gets cancelled. So we get x of s is simply equal to 1 by s plus 1. But we have taken s as sigma plus j omega. So this is 1 by sigma plus j omega plus 1. Here if sigma is equal to 0, then we get x of s is equal to 1 by j omega plus 1, which is actually what we got over here as the Fourier transform. So this will be equal to x of j omega. This example shows that x of s is equal to x of j omega if sigma is equal to 0, or if s is equal to j omega, that is purely imaginary. Let us solve some problems now. First, we have to find the Laplace transform of x of t, which is e raised to minus at u of t. X of s can be written like this: integral from minus infinity to infinity x of t e raised to minus st dt. Here x of t is e raised to minus at u of t. So this becomes integral from minus infinity to infinity e raised to minus at u of t e raised to minus st dt. U of t is the unit step function. It is 0 for all values of t from minus infinity to 0, and it is 1 for all values of t from 0 to infinity. So we don't have to integrate from minus infinity to infinity, since the product is going to be 0 anyways for t less than 0. So we will take integral from 0 to infinity e raised to minus at. From 0 to infinity, u of t is 1, so into 1 e raised to minus st dt. We can combine these two. It will become e raised to minus a plus s into t. So integral from 0 to infinity, we can write it as e raised to minus s plus a into t dt. Now we have to integrate this. We'll get minus 1 by s plus a e raised to minus s plus a into t, giving the limits from 0 to infinity. Now this will be equal to minus 1 by s plus a multiplied by, if I give the lower limit, it is 0, so I will get e raised to 0. So that is going to be 1. So I have something minus 1. Now to find what I will get here, I have to give the upper limit, that is infinity. If I give the upper limit infinity, I will get it like this: e raised to minus s plus a multiplied by infinity. Now there are two things that can happen here. S plus a can be positive, s plus a can be negative. Let us take the first case. S plus a is positive, it is greater than 0. In that case, e raised to minus s plus a into infinity will be of the form e raised to minus infinity, because s plus a is a positive, and a raised to minus infinity is equal to 0. So in that case, you will get 0 over here. Let us take the other case. S plus a is negative, it is less than 0. Then if you take e raised to minus s plus a into infinity, there is already a negative here. This is also a negative number. So negative and negative gets cancelled, and this will be of the form e raised to plus infinity, which is an infinite value. So if you substitute that over here, you will get x of s is an infinite value, which is not desirable to us. So what we can conclude from here is, if s plus a is greater than 0, then x of s converges to a finite value. But if s plus a is less than 0, x of s does not converge. So let us take the condition that s plus a is greater than 0. In that case, over here we will get 0. So this is minus 1 by s plus a multiplied by minus 1, that is 1 by s plus a. So we can conclude that x of s is equal to 1 by s plus a if s plus a is greater than 0. Or we can write s is greater than minus a. In the next problem, we have to compute the Laplace transform of x of t, which is minus e raised to minus at u of minus t. Let us start with the general equation. X of s is equal to integral from minus infinity to infinity x of t e raised to minus st dt. But x of t here is minus e raised to minus at u of minus t. So substituting that, we get integral from minus infinity to infinity. There is a negative e raised to minus at u of minus t e raised to minus st dt. Now, u of minus t is 0 for every value of t that is greater than 0, and it is 1 for every value of t that is less than 0. So we don't have to integrate from minus infinity to infinity, since the product is going to be 0 anyways if t is greater than 0. So we only have to integrate from minus infinity to 0. So this becomes negative integral from minus infinity to 0 e raised to minus at. U of minus t is 1 for t between minus infinity to 0. So 1 e raised to minus st dt. Now this can be written as e raised to minus s plus a into t. Now let us integrate it. We already have a negative outside. So minus of minus 1 by s plus a e raised to minus s plus a into t, giving limits from minus infinity to 0. Now we have a minus 1 here, we have a negative here. They can get cancelled. It will simply become 1 by s plus a. So we get 1 by s plus a into, giving the upper limit, I'll get e raised to 0, which is 1, minus I have to give the lower limit, which is minus infinity, and this is where the problem starts. If I give the lower limit, I will get e raised to minus s plus a into t is minus infinity. Here also we have two cases. S plus a can be positive or negative. Let's consider s plus a is positive. E raised to minus s plus a into minus infinity. Minus and minus can get cancelled. And since s plus a is positive, this will be of the form e raised to infinity, which is an infinite value. Now, if I put that over here, my x of s will become an infinite value and it will not converge to a finite value. So, for s plus a being greater than 0, x of s does not converge. Let us take the second case. S plus a is negative, it is less than 0. What I have is e raised to s plus a multiplied by infinity. But s plus a is negative, so this will become e raised to minus infinity, and e raised to minus infinity is equal to 0, which is a finite value. So we can say if s plus a is negative, if s plus a is less than 0, then x of s converges. So we will take that condition. S plus a is less than 0, then giving the lower limit, I will get e raised to minus infinity, that is 0. So x of s is equal to 1 by s plus a, and s plus a is less than 0. Instead of writing s plus a is less than 0, we can write s is less than minus a. Now let us compare the two results we got. We started with an x of t e raised to minus at u of t. Its Laplace transform is 1 by s plus a. The next one was minus e raised to minus at u of minus t, but its Laplace transform is also 1 by s plus a. So how did we differentiate them? The first one converges if s is greater than minus a. The second one converges if s is less than minus a. From what we learned by solving the last two problems, let us define the region of convergence of Laplace transform. We know Laplace transform of a function x of t is given like this. X of s is equal to integral from minus infinity to infinity x of t e raised to minus st dt. Then the range of values of s for which the integral given over here converges is called the region of convergence, or ROC, of the Laplace transform. We can define it in a different way also. We learned earlier that Laplace transform of a function x of t is equal to Fourier transform of x of t multiplied by e raised to minus sigma t. Then we can define ROC like this. ROC consists of the values of s equals sigma plus j omega, for which the Fourier transform of x of t e raised to minus sigma t converges. Let us now derive the condition for convergence. We know x of s is given by this integration. Integral from minus infinity to infinity x of t e raised to minus st dt. Now, when we say x of s converges, what we mean is that the magnitude of x of s is a finite value, not infinite. From here, we can write the magnitude of x of s. Magnitude of x of s will be magnitude of integral from minus infinity to infinity x of t e raised to minus st dt. Here we took the integration first and then the magnitude. Instead of that, if we take magnitude first and then integration, we'll have to change the equality sign to less than or equal to integral from minus infinity to infinity magnitude of the function x of t e raised to minus st dt. S here is sigma plus j omega. So instead of writing S, let us write sigma plus j omega. Now we have e raised to minus of sigma plus j omega into t, which can be written like this: e raised to minus sigma t multiplied by e raised to minus j omega t. Here we need the magnitude of product of x of t e raised to minus sigma t and e raised to minus j omega t. But we know e raised to minus j omega t according to Euler's formula is cos omega t minus j sine omega t. Then what will be magnitude of e raised to minus j omega t? It is root of cos square omega t plus sine square omega t. But cos square omega t plus sine square omega t is 1. Root of 1 is 1. So magnitude of e raised to minus j omega t is simply 1. So we can take the magnitude of e raised to minus j omega t here to be 1. So we can write magnitude of x of s is less than or equal to integral from minus infinity to infinity magnitude of x of t e raised to minus sigma t dt, because magnitude of e raised to minus j omega t is anyways just 1. The conclusion we can make from here is simple. For x of s to converge, integral from minus infinity to infinity magnitude of x of t e raised to minus sigma t dt should be finite. Or in simple words we can say x of t e raised to minus sigma t should be absolutely integrable, which means when you integrate its magnitude, you should get a finite value. Then we can say that ROC or region of convergence is all the values of sigma for which x of t e raised to minus sigma t should be absolutely integrable, or the values of sigma for which you get integral from minus infinity to infinity magnitude of x of t e raised to minus sigma t dt should to be a finite value. Now, the most important thing that you can notice here is that ROC here only depends on the values of sigma, it does not depend on omega. Because when we were finding the condition, the magnitude of e raised to minus j omega t simply became 1. Let us note it down. ROC is independent of omega, it only depends on values of sigma. In the last two problems we solved, we got Laplace transform of e raised to minus at u of t is 1 by s plus a, where s is greater than minus a. And Laplace transform of minus e raised to minus at u of minus t is also 1 by s plus a, but for s being less than minus a. We know S is sigma plus j omega. S depends on the value of sigma and j omega. But we just learned that the region of convergence does not depend on the value of omega, it only depends on sigma. So if S is greater than minus a, then sigma plus j omega is greater than minus a. The real parts on both sides are sigma and minus a. So we can write sigma is greater than minus a. Omega can take any value, it doesn't affect the region of convergence. So instead of writing s greater than minus a, we can write sigma greater than minus a. And instead of writing s less than minus a, we can write sigma less than minus a. So region of convergence only depends on the real part of s and not the imaginary part. Let us now make some observations based on these two equations. The algebraic expressions for the Laplace transform is identical for both signals. We got 1 by s plus a in both cases. But the set of values of sigma, which is the real part of s, for which the expression is valid, is very different. In the first case, it is if sigma is greater than minus a. In the second case, it is if sigma is less than minus a. The conclusion we can make from here is simple. Both the algebraic expression and the range of values of s for which the expression is valid are required to specify a signal. That means if I simply tell you the Laplace transform of my function x of t is 1 by s plus a, you will not be able to tell what is my original signal. It could be e raised to minus at u of t. It could also be minus e raised to minus at u of minus t. But if I tell you the Laplace transform is 1 by s plus a and it is valid for sigma greater than minus a, then you will be able to tell me my original signal is e raised to minus at u of t. So, to properly specify a signal, we need the algebraic expression. We also need the range of values of sigma for which the expression is valid. Comparing it with Fourier transform, we can say that just as Fourier transform does not converge for all signals, Laplace transform may converge for some values of sigma and not for other values of sigma. Let us now learn how to represent the region of convergence of Laplace transform of a signal. We know S is sigma plus j omega, sigma being the real part and omega being the imaginary part. We take sigma on the x axis and omega on the y axis. We call this the S plane. Let us see an example to see how region of convergence can be represented on an S plane. Let's take the familiar function e raised to minus at u of t. We already know its ROC is all values of sigma that is greater than minus a. If we represent the ROC on an S-plane, it will look like this. It is everywhere on the plane where sigma is greater than minus a. And over here, it is this shaded region. Let's take another example. This is also a familiar signal, minus e raised to minus at u of minus t. And we know here the region of convergence is all values of sigma which is less than minus a. Its ROC can be represented on an S-plane like this. It is everywhere on the plane where sigma is less than minus a. So over here it is this shaded region. Let us solve a problem now. We have to write the Laplace transform of x of t. X of t is 3 e raised to minus 2t u of t minus 2 e raised to minus t u of t. Instead of finding the solution mathematically, let us use a result that we already know to find the Laplace transform of x of t. We know Laplace transform of e raised to minus at u of t is 1 by s plus a, where sigma is greater than minus a. The first part of our signal x of t is 3 e raised to minus 2t u of t. The Laplace transform of this is going to be 3 times e raised to minus 2t u of t is of the form e raised to minus at u of t. So if the Laplace transform of e raised to minus at u of t is 1 by s plus a, then here it will be 1 by s plus 2. If the ROC here is sigma greater than minus a, over here it will be sigma greater than minus 2. Similarly, the second part of x of t is minus 2 e raised to minus t u of t. Its Laplace transform will be minus 2 times e raised to minus t u of t is of the form e raised to minus at u of t. A is here 1. So Laplace transform will be 1 by s plus 1 and ROC will be sigma greater than minus 1. Putting them together, we can write x of s, that is the Laplace transform of our signal x of t is 3 by s plus 2 minus 2 by s plus 1. But then the problem is what will be the ROC? For the first part, ROC is sigma greater than minus 2. For the second part, it is sigma greater than minus 1. The first part converges for all values of sigma that is greater than minus 2, but the second part only converges for all values of sigma greater than minus 1. It does not converge for any value of sigma between minus 2 and minus 1. So for the combination to converge, we should only take the region where both of them converge. That is sigma greater than minus 1. We can add these two terms. So we get x of s is equal to 3s plus 3 minus 2s minus 4 divided by s plus 2 multiplied by s plus 1, or x of s is equal to s minus 1 divided by s square plus 3s plus 2, and ROC is sigma greater than minus 1. Plotting the ROC on an S-plane, we will get this. It is everywhere on the plane where sigma is greater than minus 1. Let us now solve another problem. We have to find the Laplace transform of x of t, which is 3 e raised to minus 2t u of t plus 4 e raised to t u of minus t. Here also, instead of solving it mathematically, let us try to solve it using the results we already know. We know Laplace transform of e raised to minus at u of t is 1 by s plus a, where sigma is greater than minus a. And Laplace transform of minus e raised to minus at u of minus t is 1 by s plus a, where sigma is less than minus a. The first part of x of t is the same as our previous question. We have 3 e raised to minus 2t u of t, and e raised to minus 2t u of t is of the form e raised to minus at u of t. So its Laplace transform is going to be 3 times 1 by s plus a will become 1 by s plus 2, and ROC is sigma is greater than minus 2. The second part we have over here is 4 e raised to t u of minus t. This is actually of the form minus e raised to minus at u of minus t. If we compare, here the coefficient of a is minus a, here it is 1. So minus a is equal to 1, or we can write a is equal to minus 1. Let us write its Laplace transform. It will be 4 times. Over here we have a negative, so that its Laplace transform converges to 1 by s plus a. If you did not have a negative here, its Laplace transform will converge to minus 1 by s plus a, which is the case here. We don't have a negative in the amplitude. So it will be minus 1 by s plus a, minus 1 by s plus a here is minus 1. So minus 1, and sigma should be less than minus a. That is, sigma should be less than minus of minus 1 or plus 1. We don't have to write s plus minus 1, it is s minus 1. Taking them together, we can write the Laplace transform of x of t. That is, x of s is equal to 3 by s plus 2 minus 4 by s minus 1. And the ROC is going to be the region where both of them converge. The first part converges everywhere where sigma is greater than minus 2, and the second part converges everywhere where sigma is less than minus 1. So the combination is going to converge everywhere where sigma is between minus 2 and 1. We can show this on an S-plane like this. The first part converges for every sigma that is greater than minus 2, and the second part converges for every sigma that is less than 1. So the common plot is between minus 2 and 1. We can add these two to show the final x of s. If you do that, you will get x of s is equal to minus of s plus 11 divided by s square plus s minus 2, and ROC is minus 2 less than sigma less than 1. Let us solve another problem. We have to write the Laplace transform of x of t. X of t here is e raised to minus 2t u of t plus e raised to minus t cos 3t u of t. We have cos 3t over here. Let us expand it using Euler's relation. Cos 3t is equal to e raised to j 3t plus e raised to minus j 3t divided by 2. Using this in x of t becomes like this: e raised to minus 2t u of t plus e raised to minus t divided by 2, e raised to j 3t plus e raised to minus j 3t u of t. And this will be e raised to minus 2t u of t plus, taking the product of these two, we get e raised to minus 1 minus j3t by 2 plus, multiplying these two, we get e raised to minus 1 plus j3t divided by 2 u of t. So x of t has three terms. The first one is e raised to minus 2t u of t. Second one is 1 by 2 e raised to minus 1 minus j3t u of t. And the third one is 1 by 2 e raised to minus 1 plus j3t u of t. Now, these are all of the form e raised to minus at u of t. Let us take one by one. The first part is e raised to minus 2t u of t. If we compare it with e raised to minus at u of t, we can say a is equal to 2. So its Laplace transform will be 1 by s plus 2 and ROC will be sigma is greater than minus 2. The second part is 1 by 2 e raised to minus of 1 minus j3t u of t. If we compare with e raised to minus at u of t, we can see a here is 1 minus j3. Also, it is multiplied by 1 by 2. So, its Laplace transform will be 1 by 2 multiplied by 1 by s plus 1 minus j3. ROC is sigma greater than minus a. Here it is 1 minus j3, but j3 is the imaginary part. Sigma is real. So, it only depends on the real part. We can write sigma is greater than minus 1. The third part of x of t is half e raised to minus 1 plus j3 into t u of t. Comparing with our standard equation, we can see a here is 1 plus j3. So its Laplace transform will be half into 1 by s plus 1 plus j3, and sigma is going to be greater than minus 1 here also. Because the only difference is in the imaginary part and ROC does not depend on the imaginary part. Using all of this, we can write the Laplace transform of x of t. X of s will be equal to 1 by s plus 2 plus 1 by 2 times 1 by s plus 1 minus j3 plus 1 by 2 times 1 by s plus 1 plus j3. And we have to define the ROC. For the first part, sigma should be greater than minus 2. For the second part, sigma should be greater than minus 1. Third part also needs sigma to be greater than minus 1. So the common region is sigma greater than minus 1. So ROC of x of s is sigma greater than minus 1. Let us represent ROC on an S-plane. It is everywhere on the plane where sigma is greater than minus 1. We can add all of these to get the final expression of x of s. If you do that, you will get x of s is equal to 2s square plus 5s plus 12 divided by s plus 2 multiplied by s square plus 2s plus 10. And ROC is sigma greater than minus 1. In the problems that we just solved, we got x of s like this. First one was s minus 1 by s square plus 3s plus 2. The last one was 2s square plus 5s plus 12 divided by s square plus 2s plus 10 multiplied by s plus 2. They are all of the form n of s by d of s. That is, numerator is a function of s and denominator is also a function of s. We can say that these Laplace transforms are ratios of polynomials in the complex variable s. Since the numerator and the denominator are polynomials, we can call it a rational function. There are some more things we can note from here. The first one is, if the order of denominator is greater than the order of numerator, then we can say x of s is a proper function. On the other hand, if the order of numerator is greater than the order of denominator, then we can say x of s is an improper function. Also, if either n of s or d of s is not a polynomial, then x of s is not a rational function, it is an irrational function. The condition for an expression to be a polynomial is that the exponents of the variable should always be a positive integer. So over here you can see for s minus 1, the exponent of s is 1. Here it is 2, here it is 1, here it is 2, 1, 2, 1, 1. They are all positive integers. For root s, it is s raised to 1 by 2. It is not an integer. That is why it is not a polynomial. Now assume that x of s is a rational function. It is of the form n of s by d of s, where n of s and d of s are polynomials. Then we can write x of s like this. Some constant multiplied by. Let us write n of s as a product of all its factors. Assuming n of s has n primary factors, it can be written like this: s minus s1 multiplied by s minus s2 up to s minus sn. Here s1, s2 up to sn will all be the roots of n of s. Divided by d of s can also be written as the product of its factors. So it will become s minus a1 into s minus a2 up to s minus an. a1, a2 up to a1 will be the roots of d of s. Now, since s1, s2 up to sn are the roots of n of s, for values of s being s1, s2, etc. up to sn, numerator will be equal to 0. Similarly, for s being equal to a1, a2 up to an, we will get the denominator to be equal to 0. The values of s for which the numerator becomes 0 are called the zeros of x of s. These are the roots of the numerator polynomial, and for these values of x, x of s will become 0 because the numerator is equal to 0. We denote it by a naught like this. Similarly, the values of s for which the denominator becomes 0 are called poles of x of s. They are the roots of the denominator polynomial, and for these values of s, x of s will become infinity because the denominator will be 0. We denote it using a cross like this. We have two problems to solve. In the first problem, we have to determine the poles and zeros of x of s, which is s square plus 3s plus 1 divided by s plus 2 into s minus 1 into s minus 3. Here the numerator as a function is s square plus 3s plus 1, but this is equal to s plus 1 multiplied by s plus 2. And the denominator is already given as a product of its factors. It is s plus 2 multiplied by s minus 1 multiplied by s minus 3. So using this, we can write x of s is equal to s plus 1 multiplied by s plus 2 divided by s plus 2 into s minus 1 into s minus 3. But we have s plus 2 on the numerator and the denominator, so we can cancel it. So x of s is simply s plus 1 divided by s minus 1 into s minus 3. From this, we can write down the poles and zeros. Zeros are the values of s for which the numerator becomes 0. So numerator is s plus 1. So the value is s equals minus 1. Poles are the values of s for which the denominator becomes 0. Denominator will become 0 if s is equal to 1 or s is equal to 3. So s equals 1 and 3 are the poles. An important thing here is that if you directly look at x of s, it looks like in the denominator we have s plus 2, s minus 1, s minus 3. So we would feel that minus 2, plus 1 and plus 3 are the poles. But minus 2 is not a pole, only 1 and 3 are the poles. That's because s plus 2 got cancelled when we wrote s square plus 3s plus 1 as a product of its factors. S plus 2 was there in the numerator and the denominator, but minus 2 is neither a pole nor a 0 because s plus 2 gets cancelled. In the next problem, we have to determine if s equal to 0 is a pole of x of s, which is e raised to s minus e raised to minus s divided by s. If you directly look at it, we have an s in the denominator, so s equal to 0 should make the denominator 0 and it should be a pole. But let us check if it is true. At s equal to 0, our x of s becomes like this: e raised to 0 minus e raised to 0 divided by 0. That is 1 minus 1 by 0, or this is of the form 0 by 0. So we can't directly give s equal to 0. We'll have to apply limits. So we get limit s tends to 0, e raised to s minus e raised to minus s divided by s. But the function is of the form 0 by 0, so we can't directly apply limit. So we are going to use L'Hospital rule. According to L'Hospital rule, if the function is of the form 0 by 0, you can take the derivative of the numerator and the denominator and then give s equal to 0. Then x of s becomes limit s tends to 0. Derivative of e raised to s is e raised to s itself, minus derivative of e raised to minus s is minus e raised to minus s, so plus e raised to minus s divided by derivative of s is 1. Now if you give s equal to 0, this becomes e raised to 0 plus e raised to 0 divided by 1, which is equal to 2. So when s is equal to 0, x of s is 2. If s were a pole, when you give s equal to 0, you should get x of s to be infinite. But when s is equal to 0, we are getting x of s to be 2. So the conclusion is s equal to 0 is not a pole of this function. We can represent x of s through its poles and its zeros using a pole zero plot. For example, let us take x of s is equal to s minus 1 divided by s square plus 3s plus 2, and its ROC is sigma is greater than minus 1. Then its pole 0 plot will look like this. The two poles are at minus 2 and minus 1, and the 0 is at 1. We have also marked the region of convergence, which is for every value of sigma being greater than minus 1. Now, an important property of poles and zeros is this: if the degree of denominator is greater than the degree of numerator by k, then x of s will have k zeros at the infinity. To understand this, let us take an example. Say x of s is s minus 1 divided by s square plus 3s plus 2. Let us take s as common from the numerator, then it becomes s into 1 minus 1 by s. Divided by, let's take s square as common from the denominator, so this becomes 1 plus 3 by s plus 2 by s square. We have an s here and an s square here, it becomes 1 by s. Now if we give s the value infinity, 1 by s will become 0, 3 by s will become 0, 2 by s square also becomes 0, and this will be equal to 1 divided by s. But s is infinity, so x of s becomes 0. So s equals infinity is a 0 of x of s. Here the degree of denominator was 2 and the degree of numerator was 1. The difference between them was only 1. That is why we have 1, 0 at infinity. If the difference were k, instead of getting 1 by s, you would get 1 by s raised to k, which would mean there are k zeros at infinity. Similarly, if degree of the numerator is greater than the degree of the denominator by k, then x of s will have k poles at the infinity. Let us take an example: s square plus 3s plus 2 divided by s minus 1. From the numerator, let us take s square out. So 1 plus 3 by s plus 2 by s square divided by, from the denominator, let us take s out, s into 1 minus 1 by s. There is s square and s, it will become s. Now if you give the value infinity to s, 3 by s is 0, 2 by s square is 0, 1 by s is 0. So this simply becomes s. So when s is equal to infinity, x of s is also equal to infinity. So s equals infinity is a pole of the x of s. Here the degree of numerator is 2 and the degree of the denominator is 1. The difference between them is 1. That is why we got 1, 0 at the infinity. Here the degree of the numerator is 2 and degree of the denominator is 1. The difference between them is 1. That is why we got 1 pole at the infinity. If the difference were k, instead of s, you would get s raised to k, which means there are k poles at infinity. Let us solve a problem now. We have to show the pole 0 plot of x of s with its ROC. X of s is s minus 1 whole square divided by s plus 1 into s minus 2, and sigma is greater than 2. Let us write down the zeros of x of s. We have s minus 1 whole square, so there are two zeros at 1. For poles, let us look at the denominator. There is s plus 1 and s minus 2. S plus 1 will be 0 if s is minus 1, and s minus 2 will be 0 if s is 2. So the poles are at minus 1 and at 2. The pole 0 plot will look like this. We have two poles at minus 1 and 2, and we have two zeros both at 1. If we also include the ROC, it will look like this. It is everywhere on the plane where sigma is greater than 2. Another important thing we can note here is that since the degrees of numerator and denominator of x of s are equal in this case, x of s doesn't have a 0 or a pole at infinity. We have already learned that if s is equal to j omega or sigma is equal to 0, the Laplace transform converges into Fourier transform. But the problem is, what if Laplace transform doesn't have sigma in its region of convergence? So the condition for Laplace transform of a function to converge into its Fourier transform when we take sigma equal to 0 is this. The ROC of the Laplace transform should include sigma equal to 0, or it should include the j omega axis. Let us take an example to see this. In the first case, I have taken the function e raised to minus 2t u of t. Its Laplace transform is 1 by s plus 2. Its region of convergence is sigma greater than minus 2, and it's shown over here in this S-plane. The Laplace transform is valid for every sigma that is greater than minus 2, which means sigma equal to 0 is included in it. When sigma equal to 0 is included, automatically the j omega axis is also included. In the second case, my function is e raised to 2t u of t. Its Laplace transform is 1 by s minus 2, and its ROC is sigma greater than 2. It is shown over here in the S-plane. The Laplace transform is valid for every sigma that is greater than 2, which means sigma equal to 0 is not included in it. J omega axis is not included in it. So we can conclude that Fourier transform exists for our first function and it does not exist for our second function. In the first function, you can simply put sigma equal to 0 and you will get the Fourier transform. In the second case, sigma equal to 0 is not included in the region of convergence. So you cannot put sigma equal to 0 and find the Fourier transform. So we say Fourier transform does not exist for that function. Let us move on to the next part, that is properties of region of convergence of Laplace transforms. The first property is the ROC of x of s consists of strips parallel to the j omega axis in the plane. The reason for this is very simple. We have already proved that ROC only depends on the value of sigma, it doesn't depend on omega. So omega is allowed to take any values, which means when you plot ROC on an S-plane, it will always look like this. These are strips that are parallel to the j omega axis. The next property says for rational Laplace transforms, ROC does not contain any poles. The reason is that at a pole, x of s will become infinite. That means the integral is not converging to a finite value. The whole idea of region of convergence is the value of sigma for which the integral converges. But at a pole, it does not converge, so ROC can never contain a pole. According to the next property, if x of t is of finite duration and is absolutely integrable, then ROC is the entire S-plane. One thing we have to note here is that even if it is the entire S-plane, it may or may not include sigma equal to 0 and sigma equal to infinity, so we'll have to check them separately. To see the explanation, let us take a finite duration signal that is absolutely integrable. This is our signal x of t. It ranges from t1 to t2, so it is of finite duration. And absolutely integrable means if you integrate its magnitude from t1 to t2, you are getting a finite value. because nowhere is this going to infinity anywhere between t1 and t2. So when you take integral from minus infinity to infinity, magnitude of x of t e raised to minus sigma t dt here, you don't really have to integrate from minus infinity to infinity because the signal is only between t1 to t2. So the integral becomes integral from t1 to t2 magnitude of x of t e raised to minus sigma t dt. So whatever value you give for sigma, the integral is always going to be a finite value because the limits you're giving are t1 and t2, these are finite. Let us now solve a problem. We have to find the Laplace transform of delta of t plus 1 and delta of t. We can see that both of them are of finite duration. Delta of t plus 1 only exists at t equal to minus 1 and delta of t only exists at t equal to 0. Let's take the first one. X of t is equal to delta of t plus 1. Its S domain representation, x of s is going to be integral from minus infinity to infinity, delta of t plus 1 e raised to minus st dt. Now again delta of t plus 1 has value 1 at t equal to minus 1 and 0 everywhere. So we don't have to really integrate from minus infinity to infinity. We'll just take the value of this product at t equal to minus 1. And that will be delta of t plus 1 at t equal to minus 1 is 1 multiplied by e raised to minus t at t equal to minus 1 is e raised to minus s multiplied by minus 1, that is e raised to s. Now, since delta of t plus 1 is a finite duration signal, the region of convergence is supposed to be the entire S-plane. But let us check for s equal to 0 and s equal to infinity. At s equal to 0, x of s will be e raised to 0, so it is a finite value. But at s equal to infinity, x of s will be e raised to infinity, which is an infinite value. So x of s does not converge at s equal to infinity. We can say the region of convergence is the entire S-plane except s equal to infinity. Let's take the second one. We have x of t is equal to delta of t. Then x of s will be integral from minus infinity to infinity delta of t e raised to minus st dt. Again, delta of t only exists at t equal to 0. So we can take the value of this product at t equal to 0. At t equal to 0, delta of t is 1. E raised to minus st is e raised to 0, which is equal to 1. So x of s is 1 for any value of s. That means ROC of the impulse function is actually the entire S-plane. Let us solve another question. We have to find the Laplace transform of x of t, which is e raised to minus at between 0 and t, and it is 0 otherwise. So this is a finite duration signal. It only exists between 0 and t. We know x of s is given by integral from minus infinity to infinity x of t e raised to minus st dt. But here x of t is e raised to minus at between 0 and t, and it is 0 otherwise. So we only have to take the integration from 0 to t, and between 0 to t the value of x of t is e raised to minus at e raised to minus st dt. This can be written as integral from 0 to t e raised to minus s plus a t dt. Let's do the integration. We'll get minus 1 by s plus a, e raised to minus of s plus a into t, giving limits from 0 to t. Now we can write x of s is equal to minus 1 by s plus a multiplied by giving the upper limit e raised to minus s plus a multiplied by t minus giving the lower limit e raised to 0, which is 1. Let's take the negative into the bracket. So this will become 1 minus e raised to minus s plus a into t. Here the function is of finite duration. So ROC is going to be the entire S-plane. Here the integration is from 0 to t. 0 and t both are finite values. So whatever value you give to sigma, this integral is going to converge to a finite value. So ROC is the entire S-plane. Now, another thing we can see is x of s has s plus a in the denominator. So, if you give s equal to minus a, s plus a will become 0 and the denominator will become 0. So, x of s should become infinite. That means s equal to minus a should be a pole, right? If it is a pole, then s equal to minus a should not be included in the ROC. But we already have written ROC is the entire S plane. So, we have to check if it is true. At s equal to minus a, x of s will become like this. The numerator will be 1 minus e raised to minus s plus a into t becomes e raised to 0 because s plus a is 0. So it is 1 divided by s plus a is 0. So 0. So this is of the form 0 by 0 which is indefinite. So we cannot directly give s equal to minus a. We have to apply limit. Applying limit, we can write limit s tends to minus a 1 minus e raised to s plus a into t divided by s plus a. Now the function is of the form 0 by 0, so we'll have to use L'Hospital rule. Before that, let us split this term. E raised to minus s plus a into t can be written as e raised to minus st into e raised to minus at. Now let us use L'Hospital rule, according to which we have to take the derivative of the numerator and the denominator, and after that limit is applied. So we get limit s tends to minus a, taking derivative of the numerator, derivative of 1 is 0, derivative of this whole thing is minus e raised to minus at is a constant because we are taking derivative with respect to the variable s. Derivative of e raised to minus st is minus t multiplied by e raised to minus st divided by derivative of s is 1, derivative of a is 0 because it's a constant. So in the denominator we have 1. So this is equal to limit s tends to minus a. The numerator becomes t e raised to minus et e raised to minus st divided by 1. Let us now combine these two. It will become e raised to minus s plus a into t. Let us now apply the limit. S is minus a. So this becomes e raised to 0, which is 1. So our value is t. The conclusion is when s is equal to minus a, the value of x of s is t, which is finite. Surely ROC of x of s is the entire S plane, including s equals minus a. Let's move on to the next property. According to it, if x of t is right-sided, then ROC is towards the right of the rightmost pole. A right-sided signal is a signal that looks like this. It starts at some time and it extends towards the right until infinity. The next property says if x of t is left-sided, then ROC is towards the left of the leftmost pole. Now, a left-sided signal is one that looks like this. It starts at some time t and extends towards the left till minus infinity. Let us understand both these properties using an example. We have to find the Laplace transform of x of t. X of t is e raised to minus t u of t plus 2 e raised to minus 2t u of t. X of t is the combination of both these signals. Both the component signals have u of t in it, and we know u of t starts from 0 and extends up to plus infinity. So u of t is a right-sided signal. So e raised to minus t u of t and 2 e raised to minus 2t u of t will also be a right-sided signal because they also only exist from 0 to infinity. Again, both of these component signals are of the form e raised to minus at u of t, and we know its Laplace transform is 1 by s plus a. ROC is sigma greater than minus a. So we can compare it with this and find out the Laplace transform of x of t. First one is e raised to minus t u of t. Comparing it with e raised to minus at u of t, we can see a here is 1. So its Laplace transform will be 1 by s plus 1 and sigma will be greater than minus 1. Then we have 2 e raised to minus 2t u of t. Its Laplace transform will be 2 times. Here a is 2, so 1 by s plus 2 and sigma is greater than minus 2. Now combining both of them, we can write x of s, Laplace transform of the signal x of t. This will be 1 by s plus 1 plus 2 by s plus 2, and its ROC is going to be the common region for both these component signals to converge. First one converges for sigma greater than -1, second one converges for sigma greater than -2. So they both converge when sigma is greater than -1. So for x of s, the region of convergence is sigma greater than -1. Let us plot this on an S-plane. X of s has two poles, one at -2 and one at -1, and ROC is towards the right of the rightmost pole, which is -1. And that was our first property. For a right-sided signal, the ROC is towards the right of the rightmost pole. Let us move on to the next problem. We have to find the Laplace transform of x of t, which is e raised to minus t u of minus t minus e raised to minus 2t u of minus t. Here, both component signals have u of minus t, which starts from 0 and ends at minus infinity. So both of these are left-sided. So x of t is also a left-sided signal. Also, they are both of the form minus e raised to minus at u of minus t. We know its Laplace transform is 1 by s plus a with ROC sigma less than minus a. Let's compare each of them with this standard equation. So, for e raised to minus t u of minus t, the Laplace transform will be minus 1 by s plus a, here is 1, so s plus 1, and sigma will be less than minus 1. For the second part, minus e raised to minus 2t u of t. Here a is 2. So its Laplace transform will be 1 by s plus 2 and sigma has to be less than minus 2. Combining both of them, we get x of s. X of s will be minus 1 by s plus 1 plus 1 by s plus 2, and its ROC is the region where both these component signals converge. First one converges for sigma less than minus 1, but second one only converges for sigma less than minus 2. So both of them will converge for sigma less than minus 2. Therefore, that will be the ROC of x of s. We can show this on S-plane. X of s has two poles, minus 1 and minus 2, and its ROC is from minus 2 towards the left. That is, its ROC is towards the left of the leftmost pole. That was our last property. If x of t is left-sided, then ROC is towards the left of the leftmost pole. Let's move on to the next property. If x of t is double-sided, then ROC is a strip between two poles. A double-sided signal looks like this. It extends to both sides until infinity. Let us understand this using a problem. We have to find the Laplace transform of x of t. X of t is e raised to minus b mod of t. We know mod of t can be written as minus t if t is less than 0 and plus t if t is greater than 0. We get x of t is equal to e raised to minus b minus t if t is less than 0. To show that, we'll put a u of minus t here, plus e raised to minus b plus t if t is greater than 0. To show that, we'll put u of t here. Minus b into minus t is bt. So our signal becomes e raised to bt u of minus t plus e raised to minus bt u of t. The first part, e raised to bt u of minus t, has u of minus t in it, so it extends from 0 to minus infinity. The second part, e raised to minus bt u of t, has u of t in it. It extends from 0 to plus infinity. In short, x of t extends from minus infinity to plus infinity. So it is a double-sided signal. But there are two cases here. Let us take the first one. B is less than or equal to 0. In that case, the graph of x of t will look like this. Now, e raised to bt u of minus t is of the form minus e raised to minus at u of minus t, where a is minus b and the negative is absent. So, the Laplace transform of e raised to bt u of minus t will be minus 1 by s plus a here is minus b, so s minus b, sigma less than minus of minus b, that is b. The second part, e raised to minus bt u of t, is of the form e raised to minus at u of t. So Laplace transform of e raised to minus bt u of t will be 1 by s plus b, and sigma should be greater than minus b. Let us try to plot this on an S-plane. X of s has two poles, one is at b and one is at minus b. I've taken b over here because our case is b is less than or equal to 0. B is a negative value. So b is over here. Minus of b will be positive. It is over here. Anyways, for the first part, sigma is less than b. So any point over here where sigma is less than b is in the ROC of the first part. For the second part, sigma is greater than minus b. So everywhere over here where sigma is greater than minus b. The important point here is both of these do not coincide anywhere. There is no common region of convergence for these two component signals. So Laplace transform does not exist for x of t being e raised to minus b mod t. Let us now take the second case, case 2, where b is positive, it is greater than 0. Then x of t will look like this. Our function is literally the same x of t, so Laplace transforms will also be the same. The only difference is b is positive in this case. So if we try to plot it on an S-plane, it will look like this. The first part will converge anywhere where sigma is greater than minus b. And the second part will converge anywhere where sigma is less than b. So they do have some common region that is between minus b and plus b. So we can write x of s is equal to 1 by s plus b minus 1 by s minus b, and its region of convergence is minus b less than sigma less than b. It is a strip between two poles minus b and b. This is what we learned in the last property. If x of t is double-sided, ROC is a strip between two poles. If x of s is rational, then region of convergence is either bounded by poles or it extends to the infinity. For example, let us take x of s is equal to 1 by s plus 1 into s plus 2. Obviously, we can see there are two poles here at s equal to minus 1 and s equal to minus 2. Let's mark them on an S-plane. We have a pole at minus 1 and we have a pole at minus 2. There are three possible ROCs. One is towards the left of minus 1, another one is between minus 1 and minus 2, another one is to the right of minus 2. In the first case, the ROC is towards the left of the leftmost pole, so we can conclude that the signal has to be left-sided. In the second case, ROC is between minus 1 and minus 2, so the signal has to be double-sided. And in the third case, it is towards the right of the rightmost pole, so it is right-sided signal. Another thing we can see here is in the first case, ROC does not include the j omega axis, so its Fourier transform does not exist. For the second case also, ROC does not include j omega, so its Fourier transform also does not exist. For the third case, j omega axis is included, so sigma equal to 0 is a possible value for sigma and Fourier transform does exist. Now that we have learned all the properties of ROC, let us move on to inverse Laplace transform. We know x of s, Laplace transform of a function x of t is written like this: integral from minus infinity to infinity x of t e raised to minus st dt. Here s is sigma plus j omega. So we can split e raised to minus st like this: integral from minus infinity to infinity x of t e raised to minus sigma t e raised to minus j omega t dt. If we take x of t into e raised to minus sigma t as one signal, then this whole thing is nothing but the Fourier transform of it. So we can write this is equal to Fourier transform of x of t multiplied by e raised to minus sigma t. We have seen this already. Laplace transform of a function x of t is the Fourier transform of the function x of t e raised to minus sigma t. That is x of, instead of s, let us write sigma plus j omega is equal to Fourier transform of x of t e raised to minus sigma t. So to get x of t, we can simply use the inverse Fourier transform. Using inverse Fourier transform, x of t will be 1 by 2 pi integral from minus infinity to infinity x of sigma plus j omega e raised to sigma plus j omega into t d omega. Now let us take S is equal to sigma plus j omega and try to rewrite this equation. First of all, this integration is with respect to the variable omega. Omega is the variable that is taking values from minus infinity to infinity. So if we are converting this into S, we can see S is equal to sigma plus j omega. If omega can take values from minus infinity to infinity, then S can take values from sigma minus j infinity to sigma plus j infinity. Using that, we can write x of t is equal to 1 by 2 pi integral lower limit when omega tends to be minus infinity, s tends to be sigma minus j infinity. Upper limit when omega tends to be infinity, s tends to be sigma plus j infinity. X of sigma plus j omega is x of s. E raised to sigma plus j omega is e raised to st. Now we need a relation between d omega and ds. We have s is equal to sigma plus j omega. Taking derivative on both sides, ds is d sigma plus j d omega. Here sigma is a constant, so d sigma is equal to 0. We get ds is equal to j d omega, or d omega is ds divided by j. So in the equation, we will write ds divided by j. We can take j from here to here because it's a constant. So finally, we get x of t is equal to 1 by 2 pi j integral from sigma minus j infinity to sigma plus j infinity x of s e raised to st ds. Now, this is what we call inverse Laplace transform. In this course of signals and systems, we don't really have to worry about the Laplace transform of a variety of signals because we have already learned that most signals can be written as a linear combination of complex exponential signals. So, as long as we can find the Laplace transform of an exponential signal and its inverse Laplace transform, we are good. Instead of using this complex equation to find inverse Laplace transform, we'll be using a tricky method. Let me take you through the steps of finding inverse Laplace transform. Consider a rational function x of s, which is n of s by d of s. N of s is the numerator as a function of s, d of s is the denominator as a function of s. What we have to do is this. First, we have to compute the poles of x of s. Then we will consider its region of convergence. And then we will use partial fraction expansion to write x of s in this form. Some constant divided by s plus one of the poles plus some other constant divided by s plus the other pole, etc. So we can write it as a summation. Summation of ai divided by s plus ai. Ai is the ith constant and ai is the ith pole. Once we have written it like this, we can find the inverse Laplace transform. We already know how to compute poles of an expression x of s. We already know how to take ROC into consideration. So let us learn how to write x of s in this form using partial fraction expansion. There are different cases in it. In the first case, x of s is a proper fraction, that is, its denominator has a higher degree than its numerator. All the roots of denominator and numerator are real and no root is repeated. Let us see an example to see how we can write this in the form summation of ai divided by s plus ai. Here x of s is given as s plus 3 divided by s cube plus 7s square plus 10s. The first step is to factorize the denominator. Here we have s cube plus 7s square plus 10s. Our denominator is s cube plus 7s square plus 10s. We can take s out. So s into s square plus 7s plus 10. Now this becomes s multiplied by s square plus 7s plus 10s, s plus 2 into s plus 5. So this is s into s plus 2 into s plus 5. Now our x of s becomes like this: s plus 3 divided by s into s plus 2 into s plus 5. We have to write it in this form: a divided by s plus b divided by s plus 2 plus c divided by s plus 5. All we have to do is find the values of a, b, and c. Let us now design a method to find out a. For that, let us take x of s as a by s plus b by s plus 2 plus c by s plus 5. I am going to multiply this with s. Then I will get a by s multiplied by s is a plus s b by s plus 2 plus s c by s plus 5. All I did is multiplied x of s with an s. Now I am going to give a value to s. Let us say s is equal to 0. Then I will get a plus sb by s plus 2 will become 0 because s is 0. So 0 plus sc by s plus 5 will also become 0 because s is 0. So 0. So I will get a. That means to get a, all I have to do is take x of s, multiply it with s, and then give the value 0 to s. That is limit s tends to 0. If I do that, I will get the value of a. Now, assume I want to find out b now. I will again take x of s as a by s plus b by s plus 2 plus c by s plus 5. This time, I am going to multiply it with s plus 2, which is the denominator corresponding to b. Then this will become a into s plus 2 by s plus b plus c into s plus 2 by s plus 5. Now I am going to give s a value. S is equal to minus 2. If s is minus 2, then s plus 2 over here will become 0. S plus 2 over here will also become 0. So what we get is a into 0, 0 plus b plus c into 0, 0. That is, if you take x of s, multiply it with s plus 2, then apply the limit s tends to minus 2, you're giving value minus 2 to s, you will be getting b. Now we need c. Again, let us take a by s plus b by s plus 2 plus c by s plus 5. I'll be multiplying it with the denominator corresponding to c, that is s plus 5. Then this will become a into s plus 5 by s, b into s plus 5 by s plus 2 plus c. Now here the value I am going to give for s will be minus 5. So that s plus 5 here will become 0, s plus 5 here will become 0. So I get 0 plus 0 plus c. So to get c, all I have to do is take x of s, multiply it with s plus 5, then apply the limit s tends to be minus 5. This will be equal to c. Let us use the first equation to find a. A will be equal to limit s tends to 0, s multiplied by x of s. X of s is this. If I multiply it with s, then this s will be gone. I will get s plus 3 divided by s plus 2 into s plus 5. Let's give s equal to 0. So this will become 3 divided by 2 into 5, that is 3 by 10. So a is 3 by 10. Now to find b, we have to multiply this with s plus 2. So s plus 2 in the denominator will be cancelled. We get s plus 3 by s into s plus 5. So b is equal to limit s tends to minus 2, s plus 3 divided by s into s plus 5. Now let's give the value s equal to minus 2. So this becomes minus 2 plus 3, minus 2 into minus 2 plus 5. And that is minus 1 by 6. To get c, we have to multiply x of s with s plus 5. So s plus 5 in the denominator will be cancelled. We get s plus 3 by s into s plus 2. So c is limit s tends to minus 5, s plus 3 divided by s into s plus 2. Now let's give the value for s. S is minus 5. So minus 5 plus 3 divided by minus 5 into minus 5 plus 2. And this is equal to minus 2 divided by 15. So finally we can write x of s is equal to 3 by 10s minus 1 by 6 into s plus 2 minus 2 by 15 times s plus 5. So in general, we can write the ith coefficient ai is equal to limit s tends to ai, which is the ith pole, of s plus ai multiplied by x of s. Let us go to the next case. Here also all roots are real and roots are not repeated, but x of s is an improper fraction. The degree of its numerator is either greater than or equal to the degree of the denominator. Let us take an example to see what to do. We have x of s is equal to 2s square plus s minus 2 divided by s square plus s. Degree of the numerator is 2, degree of the denominator is also 2. So this is an improper fraction. The first step is to do long division. We take 2s square plus s minus 2 and divide it by s square plus s. 2s square is 2 times s square. Now 2 into s square is 2s square. 2 into s is 2s. Subtracting 2s square from 2s square, we get 0. S from 2s, we get minus s. Minus 2 minus 0 is minus 2. So from here we can write the fraction 2s square plus s minus 2 divided by s square plus s is actually 2 plus minus s minus 2 divided by s square plus s. Instead of writing minus s minus 2, we can write minus of s plus 2. Now this is x of s, so let us call it x of s instead. So x of s is 2 minus s plus 2 by s square plus s. This part is now a proper fraction, so we can use normal partial fraction expansion to write it in the desired form. So we have s plus 2 divided by s square plus s can be written as s into s plus 1. We want to write it in this form, a divided by s plus b divided by s plus 1. We have to find a and b, but we already have methods to find out a and b. A will be equal to limit s tends to the pole corresponding to this denominator is s equal to 0. So s tends to 0, s multiplied by x of s. So limit s tends to 0, x of s is this. If you multiply it with s, then this s will be gone. What we get is s plus 2 by s plus 1. So s plus 2 by s plus 1. If you give the number s equal to 0, then this becomes 2 by 1. So a is 2. Similarly, let's find out b. B is the coefficient for 1 by s plus 1. So to get b, we'll have to take limit s tends to, the pole corresponding to b is minus 1. So minus 1, s plus 1 multiplied by x of s. X of s is this. If you multiply it with s plus 1 in the denominator will be gone and you will get s plus 2 by s. So limit s tends to minus 1, s plus 2 divided by s. Let us give the number minus 1 to s. So we get minus 1 plus 2 divided by minus 1. That is minus 1. So a is 2 and b is minus 1. Therefore, we can write s plus 2 divided by s into s plus 1 is 2 by s minus 1 by s plus 1. What we want is x of s. So we can write x of s is 2 minus s plus 2 by s square plus s. So minus 2 by s plus 1 by s plus 1. So if your x of s is an improper fraction, the only extra step you have to do is long division. Let us go to the next case. Here x of s is a proper fraction. All roots are real, but the roots are repeated. Let's take an example to understand what to do in this case. We have x of s is equal to s plus 3 divided by s into s plus 2 whole square. In the denominator, we have s plus 2 whole square, that is s plus 2 multiplied by s plus 2. So if s equal to minus 2, this will become 0, this will also become 0. So we say at minus 2, we have 2 poles. To write this in the desired form, first we will take s plus 3 divided by s into s plus 2 whole square in this form. A divided by s plus b divided by s plus 2 plus c divided by s plus 2 whole square. We have to find out a, b and c. Finding A is easy. We can write A is equal to limit s tends to the pole 0, s multiplied by x of s. That is, limit s tends to 0, s multiplied by x of s will be s plus 3 divided by s plus 2 whole square. If you give s equal to 0, you will get 3 divided by 4. In fact, even finding c is easy. Let us write a by s plus b by s plus 2 plus c by s plus 2 whole square. If you multiply the whole thing with s plus 2 whole square, then this becomes a into s plus 2 whole square divided by s plus b into s plus 2 whole square by s plus 2 is b into s plus 2 plus c. Now if you give s equals minus 2, this will become 0 and this will become 0. So you get 0 plus 0 plus c. So to get c, all you have to do is limit s tends to minus 2, s plus 2 whole square multiplied by x of s. X of s is this. If you multiply it with s plus 2 whole square, this will be gone. You get s plus 3 by s. So this is limit s tends to minus 2, s plus 3 by s. If you give minus 2 to s, c is minus 1 by 2. Now the problem starts when we try to find out b. Let us take, to find b, let us take a by s plus b by s plus 2 plus c by s plus 2 whole square, which is our x of s, and let us multiply it with the denominator corresponding to b, which is s plus 2. Now if you do that, the first term will become a by s into s plus 2, second term becomes simply b, third term becomes c by s plus 2. Now, if you give the value s equals minus 2 to this, what happens is this s plus 2 will become 0, so that is okay. Here you will get b, that is also okay. But the third term has s plus 2 in the denominator, so it will become c by 0, which is indefinite. So this method will not work for us to find out b. To find b, we have to do something else. We will take x of s, we will multiply it with s plus 2 whole square instead of s plus 2, just like we did over here to find c. But instead of directly giving the limit s tends to minus 2, we will first take its derivative with respect to s and then give limit s tends to minus 2. Let us check if this works or not. X of s is a by s plus b by s plus 2 plus c by s plus 2 whole square. We have to multiply it with s plus 2 whole square. So we will get a into s plus 2 whole square by s plus b into s plus 2 plus c. Now we have to derive this with respect to s. Now we have to take the derivative of this with respect to s, d by ds of this whole thing. The first term will be a multiplied by s into derivative of s plus 2 whole square, that is s plus 2 into 2 plus s plus 2 whole square into derivative of s, that is 1, divided by square of the denominator s square, plus the second term becomes b multiplied by derivative of s is 1, derivative of 2 is 0, so just b, plus derivative of c is 0 because c is a constant. Now if you give the value s is equal to minus 2, what will happen is s plus 2 here will become 0, s plus 2 here will also become 0. So the first term will become 0. Then we have b, we have 0. So here if you give s equal to minus 2, you will get the value of b. So to get b, what you have to do is take x of s, multiply it with s plus 2 whole square, just like you did for c. But instead of directly giving the limit s tends to minus 2, first take the derivative of it with respect to s. X of s is given over here, s plus 3 divided by s into s plus 2 whole square. If you multiply it with s plus 2 whole square, this will be gone from the denominator and you get s plus 3 by s. So you need to take the derivative of s plus 3 by s with respect to s. So that will be s multiplied by derivative of s plus 3, which is 1, minus s plus 3 multiplied by derivative of s, which is 1, divided by s square. So s minus s plus 3 is minus 3 by s square. So this is limit s tends to minus 2, minus 3 by s square. Giving s equal to minus 2, we get b is minus 3 by 4. Let us now solve a problem. We have to find the inverse Laplace transform of x of s, which is 1 by s minus 1 into s plus 2. The first thing we are going to do is take 1 by s minus 1 into s plus 2 and write it in this form: a by s minus 1 plus b by s plus 2. We have to find out the values of a and b. To find a, what we have to do is take limit s tends to the pole corresponding to a is 1. So s tends to 1. S minus 1 multiplied by x of s. So limit s tends to 1. X of s multiplied by s minus 1 is 1 by s plus 2. Giving x equal to 1, this is equal to 1 by 3. Now let's find out b. B will be equal to limit s tends to the pole corresponding to b is minus 2. So s tends to minus 2, s plus 2 multiplied by x of s. That is limit s tends to minus 2, s plus 2 multiplied by x of s is 1 by s minus 1. So we get 1 by minus 2 minus 1 or minus 1 by 3. So we can write x of s is equal to 1 by 3 times 1 by s minus 1 minus 1 by 3 times 1 by s plus 2. The poles are at s equal to 1 and s equal to minus 2. Let us plot this on an S-plane. We have one pole at minus 2 and one pole at plus 1. There are three possible ROCs here. Either it can be towards the left of minus 2, or between minus 2 and 1, or towards the right of 1. The reason is ROC cannot contain any pole. So these are the only three options we have without containing minus 2 and plus 1. Let us take the first case. Sigma is less than minus 2. That means ROC is towards the left of the leftmost pole. This happens when our signal is left sided. So we want 1 by 3 into 1 by s minus 1 and 1 by 3 into 1 by s plus 2 to be left sided. And we have the standard formula for a left sided signal: 1 by s plus a with sigma less than minus a is the Laplace transform of minus e raised to minus at u of minus t. Here we have 1 by 3, 1 by s minus 1. So 1 by 3 multiplied by, compare 1 by s minus 1 with 1 by s plus a. So a is minus 1 here. So the inverse Laplace transform will be minus e raised to plus 1t u of minus t. The next component signal is minus 1 by 3, 1 by s plus 2. So minus 1 by 3 multiplied by, compare 1 by s plus 2 with 1 by s plus a. A here is 2. So substituting a equal to 2 here, we can get its inverse Laplace transform. It is minus e raised to minus 2t u of minus t. We have minus and minus, it will become plus. So the inverse Laplace transform of x of s, if the ROC is towards the left of the leftmost pole, is minus 1 by 3 e raised to t u of minus t plus 1 by 3 e raised to minus 2t u of minus t. They are both left-sided. The signal x of t is also left-sided. Let's take the second case. Our ROC is between minus 2 and 1. So minus 2 less than sigma less than 1. Here the ROC is between two poles. That means our signal has to be double-sided. So one of the component signals is right-sided and the other is left-sided. The one with s plus 2 in the denominator should be right-sided. So we can take this part. The one with denominator s minus 1 should be left-sided. So its ROC will be like this. Their common part will be between minus 2 and 1. So we want 1 by 3, 1 by s minus 1 to be left-sided and minus 1 by 3 into 1 by s plus 2 to be right-sided. The first part here is 1 by 3, 1 by s minus 1. We want it to be left-sided. So we'll compare it with the first expression. 1 by 3 multiplied by minus e raised to plus 1t u of minus t. We have already written that over here. This is the left-sided version of our first part. For the second one, we have minus 1 by 3. It has to be right-sided. So 1 by s plus 2 here will be compared with 1 by s plus a here. A is equal to 2. So we can substitute a equal to 2 over here to get its inverse Laplace transform. It will be e raised to minus 2t u of t. So when ROC is between minus 2 and 1, x of t is minus 1 by 3 e raised to t u of minus t minus 1 by 3 e raised to minus 2t u of t. Here we have u of minus t towards the left. Here we have u of t towards the right. So when ROC is between two poles, x of t has to be double-sided. Let us take the third case. ROC is towards the right of the rightmost pole, which is 1. So sigma is greater than 1. In this case, both functions have to be right-sided. So we'll compare both of them with this expression. The first one is 1 by 3 into 1 by s minus 1. So 1 by 3 into 1 by s minus 1 can be compared with 1 by s plus a. A is equal to minus 1. Substitute it here to get its inverse Laplace transform. E raised to a is minus 1, so plus t u of t. The next term is minus 1 by 3 into 1 by s plus 2. So minus 1 by 3 multiplied by, let us compare 1 by s plus 2 with 1 by s plus a. A is equal to 2. Substitute it over here to get its inverse Laplace transform. We get e raised to minus 2t u of t. So when sigma is greater than 1, x of t is 1 by 3 e raised to t u of t minus 1 by 3 e raised to minus 2t u of t. We have u of t here, so it is right-sided. We have u of t here, so it is also right-sided. So we can say the total signal is right-sided. When our ROC is towards the right of the rightmost pole, the signal is right-sided. So that's all about it for today. See you in the next video. And don't forget to subscribe.